But this welcome to kind of the first meeting in 2025 of the Georgia Partnership for Forest and Water. This has been an effort that has been around for a little while now, under the leadership of Miss Kathy Hawes and before her Miss Kitty Wiseman with the Southeastern Partnership for Forest and Water, and really an effort, a collaborative effort that spans really the U.S. South, and has been traditionally focused on in improving and raising awareness of the connection between well-managed forests and water quality and quantity. Um, and I thought it'd be appropriate to start off here. Um, Forests have always cleaned our water. So why should we be talking about why people should pay for it today, right? Why should anyone invest in forests for water quality, given that they're doing it for free today? I thought this infographic from the Southeastern Partnership and Miss Kathy's team is really appropriate. I think it shows kind of the importance of our forested landscape to the water quality and quantity for all the citizens of the U.S. South. Really, that number, a couple of numbers to clue in there: 44.3% state and private forest land provide 44.3% of the total water supply for the U.S. South. And so they're inextricably connected. We can't have clean water without well-managed forests. And certainly we need water and good water quality to have healthy forests. And so, a lot of people who are in the forestry sector have seen this slide before, but this is a research study that the U.S. Forest Service is done and updates every year. And I think there's actually a new update that it came out recently. But I think it's important to understand the context that if the South continues to develop at the rate that it is currently developing, and in Georgia, we're certainly seeing that pressure from development. We're forecasted to lose between 11 to 23 million acres of forest, nearly solely due to urban land use change. And so, with that comes a critical loss of not only water quality, but a critical loss of all ecosystem services that forestry provides. And you can see the map here to the left. I mean, it shows the kind of orange and dark red counties are not going to be a surprise to anybody on this call. I think we understand the massive amount of growth that's taking place in those counties, and with that comes the expense of a loss of forest land. As urban sprawl continues and as we continue to see a decrease in value from timber prices, you will continue to see a loss of critical forest land and what I would consider to be critical infrastructure for our state and for our nation. A look at that infrastructure. So this map on the left is from a study that was done here in Georgia through the Georgia Forestry Commission with in a partnership with the Southern Research Station of the U.S. Forest Service. It shows the 404 surface drinking water intakes across the state, and really where those are spread out, and they're really in the areas that are relying most on forests for that filtration and water quality purpose. And as we can, once again, as we consider kind of that loss of forests. That's a loss of kind of natural filtration. It's an increase in sediment and contaminants in streams and a loss of stream flow. And I think a lot of us are aware of that on this call. But the ultimate result is that water utilities, corporations, and others have to look for other places to get that water quality benefit because they're not getting it from forest land. And that is kind of what our organization is really focused on, is what is the role of an ecosystem service market. And I think this comparison here is a great look at why this coalition is together. Water providers, water users really have a few different options in their conservation toolbox, if they will. Long-term conservation easements are certainly effective. I think water utilities and corporations who focus on direct land purchases find that those are certainly effective. It comes with a lot of management costs as well. And so those are typically done very sparingly. I think around some critical infrastructure, if you have a water intake or a place that's close to a manufacturing facility and you want to provide a little bit more of a buffer, that direct land purchase is a good way to go as well. But an ecosystem service market that doesn't necessarily exist today is an option for people who depend on water for their success. That could be water utilities, could be corporations, could be other water users. And likewise, as landowners, as forest managers, we have a few different ways to make revenue off of our properties. Timber harvest, certainly a part of that. Hunting leases, certainly a part of that. And then increasingly, we're looking for opportunities to leverage investments in ecosystem services to support the offsetting of management expenses or simply just providing another revenue stream for landowners. And so that is why this group is together. We exist for the purpose of uniting forest landowners, utilities, conservation partners, corporate industry leaders, and government agencies to advance investments in Georgia's water resources through the recognition of conservation and sustainable management practices on privately owned working forests. And so if you're here today, it's likely because you fall into one of those buckets and you care either greatly about that forested resource or that water resource. We have, I think, a lot that we can share together. We have a lot that we can do together. And really, the meeting objectives for today is to share updates from our key partners and highlight some success stories. We've got Jenny Sanders here from the Texas Longleaf Team, who's going to share a case study of a corporate project that they are doing in East Texas. And then ultimately, I think this group is well positioned to identify opportunities to advance those forest-based water solutions here in Georgia. And I think we've got some of the most creative people in the business on this call. And one of the things I love about being a Georgian is that it is kind of the perfect intersection between commerce and conservation. And there's some really innovative ways that we can look at solving this problem and really creating a place that we want to live, work, and play in long into the future. So I appreciate everybody for being on this call. I appreciate the time that you are dedicating to this effort. I'm going to kick it over to, like I said, Miss Kathy Hawes, who is the coordinator for the Southeastern Partnership for Forest and Water, to share a few updates from her work across the South.
Morning, everybody. Bear with me. I'm fighting a bug this morning, but hopefully my voice won't give out. I have a few links to share with you and just a little anecdote, but I see a lot of names on here that I don't recognize. Maybe this is your first call, and I just wanted to offer up to you guys, if you haven't the desire to learn about the Southeastern Partnership as a whole, its origin, the goals in some of the other states, and a lot of case studies that have gone into action to try to pay for a lot of these services, some payments for ecosystem services programs that are already in action. And I can provide that to you guys. You just have to reach out, and I'll put my contact information down there. But there's a lot more, and the way Georgia has taken this, they really want to hone in on finding a replicable model for this payments for ecosystem services. We want to find a way to compensate private landowners for the value that their services, their forests, and the management of them provides to downstream water users. And there's a lot of different models for calculating that value. A few of them I want to throw into chat here, and you guys can investigate. But one thing I wanted to mention was just yesterday I had a stakeholder meeting in the Florida Partnership for Forests and Water. There was a project that came up, and it was, I think, 500 acres of land that needed to be reforested, and there wasn't the funds to do that. So we threw together a stakeholder meeting just like this one. We had the Florida Forest Service. We had partners including the Longleaf Alliance, the local water management district, the state's Rural Water Association executive director, and we just put together a whole list of funding sources going from grants to a lot of the DoD funded things, since it's in the Western Panhandle, so just south of you. And since it's close to Eglin, there were a lot of opportunities there. Different ways of putting these funds together. And by the time we had the meeting yesterday, it had been funded through these discussions. And so I wanted to make sure that you guys know that whenever something like that comes up, there's a big project, that we can put together a team of stakeholders and just have a brainstorming session and see what we can put together. But we can reach out to and invite people to a structure like this Georgia Partnership, a structured meeting, and really get some things going. One thing that I wanted to mention to you guys is that we're talking about this partnership, but we really want to put something into action. We've got a few case studies to work with that are exactly what we want down here in Georgia for a specific watershed, but we're ready. Matt's got a report that says that the Oconee watershed is ready for this type of investment, this type of program. We have people that want to invest in the testing of a model, and we can put our heads together and take pieces from this case study and that one, like a menu, and just tailor it to exactly what's right for that watershed, and then put it into action. And that's what we want to do. So along those lines, this first one here is it's a proposal that comes out. It's in its 5th year now, and I expect it to come out again next year. The proposal window just closed, so we missed it for the year, but we can plan ahead for next year. This is called Nature for Water, and what they're trying to do is take a lead organization like a watershed, a water management district, or a river basin organization, or a utility, someone that wants to Thanks, Matt, that wants to put something into action. And they have a team that comes in and helps design it from beginning to end. If all you have is just a bunch of stakeholders and an idea, they'll take it from that point. If your idea is ready for implementation, then they come in and help you from implementation on. And so if anybody is just be thinking over the next year about opportunities like this one and this other one I'm going to share, which is through the Nature Conservancy. It's called the Resilient Watersheds Toolbox. And what they want to do is set up water markets. So they have what they call watershed investment programs, and they want to use tools like, let's say, if you all haven't heard of forest resilience bonds that are popular out in Western states, a green bond, which gets investors together, and Central Arkansas Water put together a green bond, the first one of its kind, and it's designed specifically to invest in drinking water protection, which is the management of some privately owned, or they acquire the land, but the management of those forests. And this utility has a prescribed bird team on staff to carry that stuff out. So these are ways that we could go from just brainstorming ideas into actually putting something into action. And I'm ready to go with that. I want to get something going for several years now. I think I came in 22, and I've got a lot of these partnerships. We've had a lot of meetings, but we really want to put something into action. And we had a couple of good starts. The Savannah River Clean Water Fund is in a stage of development. The Oconee River Watershed Partnership is in a stage of development. Chattahoochee has potential. And so let's see what we can do, what we can put into action. And if anybody has ideas about how to pursue that, or what our first steps should be, then I want to make myself available for that. And then also, I just wanted to let you all know about two events. One is in Savannah on May 9th. I'm going to be speaking to the District 8 water professionals, and Laura Walker put this together. It's the Coastal Georgia water professionals, I believe, and I'll be talking to them in person. And then on May 22nd, I'm going to be putting on a webinar. It's from 2 to 3:30, but I haven't sent out the announcement yet. And this has to do with the Forest to Faucets application. So if you're familiar with, if you're not familiar with this, then you'll enjoy checking this out. I'll put that link down there as well. But this is an application that the U.S. Forest Service put together, and you can look at a particular watershed and see. It'll tell you how many downstream water users are your forest is providing water to, which utilities are servicing those customers, which acres, which parcels and sections of forest are the most valuable to the water quality of that downstream water. So it really links together this forest and drinking water segment, and what they're doing is they're producing another iteration of this. So I thought at this time, wouldn't it be great? I know that there's a lot of people that still need a tutorial on this program. So I'm going to do a 90-minute webinar with the U.S. Forest Service. And the first 45 minutes just going to be going over the current application, the uses of it, and what people have been able to do with it. And then the next 45 minutes is going to be a discussion about how to improve this, since they're going to be working on a new version. And one of the things that I'm going to suggest, this is all surface water, and I want them to try to include some element of groundwater, because you've got a lot of systems there in Georgia, I think in the South especially, that are pulling their drinking water from underground. And so we need to know a little bit more about groundwater sources as well, that like the example that I gave you of the Western Panhandle of Florida that we were talking about yesterday, what this acreage of forest, it was 500 acres above the sand and gravel aquifer. And what they had done, they've got a partnership together to try and work on much larger than 500 acres around there, but they haven't reached out to the utilities. And those utilities have a vested interest in the long-term protection of this aquifer. And in Texas, you've got a couple of the Edwards Aquifer. They have whole stakeholder groups that have organized around protecting that aquifer for the future. And so we talked a little bit about how to get utilities involved in that as well. So the forests also have a good impact on recharge rates, especially the longleaf pine recharge rates for the underground aquifers. So that's something that we can investigate. And if you all, I'm going to put my email address down in chat and reach out to me. If you're not on the main mailing list for the Southeastern Partnership, I can add you to that. It's just one e-newsletter a quarter, and that'll have the information for the link for the webinar on May 22nd. And that's all I've got, Matt.
Hey, Kathy, remind us when the presentation to the Coastal Georgia Water Professionals is.
May 9th. I think it's in the
May
morning
9th.
from 9 to 11.
And I know we've got a couple of guys that are over in that area. If they wanted to attend and show you some support, would they be able to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. We'll make sure to make a note about that. And then your webinar is on the 22nd. Is that correct?
That's right. 2 to 3:30 Eastern.
2 to 3:30. Okay. Any questions for Miss Kathy? Awesome.
Jenny, I have to
Well,
jump, but he's recording this so that I get to see and hear you talk.
absolutely. Well, thank you, Miss Kathy, and we appreciate all the work that you're doing across these southeastern states, and look forward to continuing to remain plugged in to all the work that you're doing. So next up on our agenda, as Kathy mentioned, we have Miss Jenny Sanders here, who is the leader of the Texas Longleaf Team, and been kind of an observer of the work of the Texas Longleaf Team for a while. Kept up with them on LinkedIn, and we of course are good buddies with the guys over at the Texas Forestry Association, and so get to see some of the good work that they are doing. Had a great conversation with Jenny a couple of weeks ago about a project that they are working on in East Texas related to a corporate investment in direct forest conservation efforts. And we thought, I think the interesting component of understanding not only how to get a project like that done, but how to demonstrate actual value back to the corporations who are investing in these projects is important. And we thought it'd be a valuable thing for this group to hear. And so, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Miss Jenny and let you take it from here.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here. Assuming y'all can hear me all right, I'm going to try to get my screen shared. I always struggle with this when you go into presentation mode. Let's see. Okay. And here we go again. Are you seeing my screen? I don't think it's, there we go. Okay, here we go. All right.
We
Does
got
that
it.
look right? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, I appreciate y'all having me, and I hope what we've had going on over about the last 5 years in Texas can help other folks. It's really been a pretty cool ride we've been on, realizing the opportunity for corporate investment and conservation that I truly never realized existed. So I'm going to take you through, instead of just jumping directly into this particular project that Matt referred to, I'm going to kind of take you through the timeline of how we got there. And I think it's a neat story that I think others will relate to, as far as an evolving partnership and how we've figured out with lots of really critical partners involved, how we could kind of diversify our funding, get landowners engaged, and really get some amazing work done on the ground. So to start out, a little bit of quick background about the Texas Longleaf Team. I'm sure some of you are aware of the America's Longleaf Restoration Initiative. Texas is the western edge of that initiative. We were formed, I've got stuff on top of my screen here. I need to move. Okay. So the Texas Longleaf Team was formed in about 2014 by a diverse group of conservation-minded stakeholders and you can see our partners there, to accelerate restoration of the longleaf ecosystem in that part of Texas that was part of the historic range. The goals of our organization, based on a pretty extensive conservation plan that was put together at that time, was that we wanted to establish 15,000 acres of longleaf pine, enhance and or maintain about 110,000 acres on both public and private forest land, primarily through prescribed fire and other mid-rotation practices. And then we wanted to accomplish these goals. By accomplishing these goals, it would double the amount of longleaf ecosystem that was kind of documented in about the 1990s. So big goals. And again, we're the western edge of the America's Longleaf Restoration Initiative that encompasses about 17 teams from Virginia to Texas. Similarly organized teams of partners that are looking to restore this ecosystem for all the amazing benefits that much of the same stuff that you were talking about, Matt, the amazing diversity of wildlife habitats, the water filtration, everything that open pine in general, well-managed working forests create, but kind of I like to say kind of on steroids, because the longleaf ecosystem itself is so unique. So in order to do that, our team, it works using a cost share program we call the Texas Longleaf Conservation Assistance Program. We try to fund, basically offset landowner expenses from everything from site prep all the way through management over time of the ecosystem with prescribed fire and herbicide, mechanical, and obviously the initial planning costs. We try to at least provide a 50% cost share on each of those practices. And then also provide technical assistance and outreach and training opportunities as well. The map there, those are the counties of the historic range with we went through a pretty extensive mapping operation to develop this decision support tool a few years ago. So those red areas being the highest priority for restoration. As of 2019, I came on in 2019 and the team was kind of struggling. You can see there our goals for restoration. This is in terms of trees planted. Similarly, if we looked at acres restored, we weren't on track as of that time. We were struggling to get landowners engaged, and therefore, when you have funding, primarily all of our funding at that time was through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, through the Forest Land Stewards Program, the Longleaf Landscape Stewardship Fund. We were getting funds, but then not able to get them out the door because we weren't engaging landowners effectively enough. And so they brought me on, and we went through a pretty extensive reevaluation of how we were promoting the program, both to landowners and to potential funders. The first thing we did is looked at who owns the Texas forest. I think a lot of the messaging that the team had been using was a little outdated. Lots has changed in Texas over the last 15, 20 years, as I know it has throughout the Southeast, as far as who owns timberland, what the objectives are for those timberlands. 50% of the timberlands in East Texas are family forest. And then the other major piece of that, about 40% are corporates, the TIMOs and REITs. But when you look at the family forest side of things, which is we do work with TIMOs and REITs, and we've had good success with those groups. especially on their marginal lands that they know that longleaf is going to be the most likely to survive. But I can tell you more of that later with some of the more environmentally focused TMOs that are now looking at longleaf just because of the environmental benefits of that as well. But we're going to focus on the family forest for now. This data is from the Texas A&M Natural Resource Institute does a Texas land trends analysis every 5 years. And repeatedly over the last 10 to 15 years, we're seeing more and more of these top 5 reasons for owning land. And when you look at in these family forests, particularly, they're listing beauty, family legacy, natural protection, protection of nature, wildlife habitat, privacy, hunting, 11, 12, 15 items like that before you get down to income. And almost all of our messaging prior to this point was focused on timber income and how you can make money off of your land. And obviously that doesn't sell real well when you're talking about longleaf pine. Obviously there's still opportunity for revenue generation from timber, but it's not going to be the primary, probably. It's not the primary message that's going to sell longleaf restoration. So that was part of our calculus. And basically what we realized is that the family forest owner in East Texas that was our main audience was, retired folks that have a recreational property, what I call reborn to the landowners that maybe didn't, some generational lands, but mostly a lot of new forest owners that maybe bought cut over lands, maybe their primary interest is in recreation and hunting, but also you find that a lot of them are just interested in taking, I get calls all the time. I want my forest to be what it was like back when my grandpa talked about the forest, 70, 80, 100 years ago. And so we saw more and more of that. When we changed our messaging after that whole analysis, within a year, we had landowners beating down our door wanting funding for longleaf restoration. All it took was a change in messaging. Jumping ahead too fast there. So what ended up happening is where we were not getting funding in the years prior because we couldn't get the funding out the door. Now we didn't have enough funding, even through the generosity of the NIFWIF Longleaf Landscape Stewardship Fund. Our demand for the program was outpacing the funding that we had. And so then what took us next to, okay, well, we can only get so much funding from NIFWIF. If we're going to really be able to supply the demand for longleaf restoration in Texas, we're going to have to start looking to diversify our funding. How can we do that? And we were kind of just playing with this idea when something really cool fell in our lap. And that was the development of Texan by Nature was an organization that's been around in Texas since about 2011, founded by First Lady Laura Bush. And the goal of this organization was to connect, and I'll just read this. It was founded by Laura Bush to unite conservation and business leaders who believe our state's prosperity is dependent on the conservation of our natural resources. So the whole goal of this program, this organization, is to connect industry with conservation programs that can come together where that industry can fund that conservation, mostly centered around ESG, sustainability, and those types of things. So in an effort to do this organization, and I say all the time that I think Texan by Nature and this Texas Water Action Collaborative, which grew out of that I'll talk about later, is really one of the best things that's happened to conservation in Texas in decades, maybe longer. Their whole goal is to accelerate conservation through corporate investment. And they're just doing an amazing job of it. And what I'm going to lay out to you is just one example of many. I encourage you to look up their website. I would love to see organizations like this pop up throughout the United States. It's just an amazing model. And so what it came down to, so they adopted us, the organization adopts 6 to 8 what they call conservation wranglers every year. That's what this slide is. And so they take a Texas-based conservation organization focused on collaboration, conservation, partnership, and they basically take you on to find ways to amplify your work in the form of project management, strategic planning, marketing, messaging. And so we went to them with a proposal and said, we are wanting to find ways to diversify our income, our funding sources. Right now, we're totally grant funded. Are there ways that we can find corporate funds to meet the demand for longleaf restoration in Texas? And so we launched out on this goal. And so what we quickly figured out is that we weren't speaking the language of the corporates that had money for conservation. There are corporates out there under the consumers are increasingly demanding that companies that they do business with demonstrate a commitment to environmental sustainability and in the production of their goods and services, right? So this, obviously this demand has given rise to this ESG standards, and that this is the standard by which corporations are judged by their shareholders, their customers, and their boards of directors to meet these specific pre-designated metrics in the production of their goods and services. And so in 2015, the UN issued this urgent call to action, identifying these 17 sustainable development goals. And what we worked through with Texan by Nature is putting our work in the terms of those sustainable development goals in a way that resonated with the corporates that have funding to meet those standards, whether that's becoming carbon neutral or offsetting water usage, or supporting poverty, alleviation of poverty in the areas they operate. And so, we're really good at talking about what we realized is we're really good at saying, hey, we restored 1,100 acres of longleaf ecosystem, and that supports all these wildlife species, and it's great for water, water quantity and quality and carbon sequestration and storage. But what was missing in the minds of the corporates was, well, that sounds good. Well, how much? How much water are you producing? What's the volumetric water yield of the project that you just did? What is the actual carbon, measurable carbon that's being sequestered and stored? And so we went through this really extensive process where we pulled all of our metrics that we know we are able to claim. And then with the work of Texan by Nature and these just brilliant minds that they have evaluating this stuff, we did. And also the help of the Texas statewide assessment of forest ecosystem services, which is a great effort by the Texas A&M Forest Service. I'm sure other states have something similar where they do have ways that you can evaluate what the forest produces in those various areas. So we went through peer-reviewed literature, all these data sets to demonstrate the value of our projects. And then that wasn't enough. We also worked with a group called Ecometrics to authenticate the numbers that we came up with, and then turn that also into monetary value for each of those metrics. And so what came out of that is what Texan by Nature calls the Return on Conservation Index. And I'm gonna drop some of these documents and their websites into the chat here in a minute when I stop talking. But this Return on Conservation Index is really what ended up being the key that unlocked a lot of this corporate funding, because we were able to take what we in the conservation world talk about all the time in these warm, fuzzy terms of the great work that we do into actual numbers and monetary value that those corporates could then use to say, here's what we're producing if we support this conservation program. And so what is the return on conservation index? This is what it developed as a scorecard, where we pulled those sustainable development goals, those 17 goals that the UN put out as the standard for corporations to utilize in their sustainability work. And we pulled any of them that we felt like applied to our work. And there's a whole framework. If you look up sustainable development goals in the UN website, of that's what these 2.5, 2 point whatever. And so we pulled out each of those items that we felt like our work applied to. We put the metrics in on that impact column, and then Ecometrics went in and actually applied a dollar amount to that. And so really interesting stuff. It's like, wow, I've never thought of the work that we do in these terms. And I promise I'm going to get to water. Just hang tight with me. I'm almost there. So through this rigorous research, working with the experts, the Texas A&M Forest Service, all of that peer review, we came up with these demonstrable ways of communicating the work that we're doing. So I presented this. So that was 2019 was when we started the process of changing our messaging and looking at our audiences and our funding streams. 2021 is when we did the project with Texan by Nature. We developed this return on conservation index. So the end of 2021, Texan by Nature did a conservation summit where they brought together leaders in the corporate world in Texas and leaders in conservation to this summit at the George Bush Conference Center in Dallas. And I had the opportunity to present this work, present about the Texas Longleaf Team, what our effort had been, that we were fixing to launch because we had just done this big project and done the return on conservation index. Our next step is we're launching an effort to pull in corporate support for our work. And we had this whole mapping project that we were going to do. I presented. The moment I walked off the stage, and this is how powerful this data is when you present it in this way to the people that have the money to spend. I walked off that stage and was accosted by the director of sustainability for HEB, which is the big local Texas-based grocery chain here, saying, we're coming to East Texas and we've been looking for projects that we can support. They have a whole program called HEB Helping Here, where they want to demonstrate support in the ecosystem surrounding the places where their stores are going to be. Right off the bat, no strings attached, they gave us $50,000 to fund 2 projects near their new stores that were going in East Texas. I was like, wow, that was easy. In a few weeks after that, I get a call from the Apache Corporation. Again, they saw our project. They saw the presentation at the summit. They said, look, we've got this goal to plant 5 million trees by 2025. Sounds like y'all plant a lot of trees. Can we fund the trees that you plant? I said, well, we just approved projects to plant 380,000 trees, seedlings, longleaf seedlings this year. They funded 100% of all of that, $74,000 worth of seedlings. The following year is about 500,000 seedlings at $110,000. And I didn't update that. 2024, they gave us funding as well. So all of that, I know I haven't gotten to water yet, but it's the power of speaking in the terms of the corporates, putting the work that you're doing in the terms that mean something to them. So the next opportunity, I've got an extra slide there. The next opportunity that, again, kind of dropped in our lap was we got a call through Texan by Nature again, and the Texas Water Action Collaborative. That's what that slide was supposed to be. My logo's gone. So there's supposed to be a logo there. about the Texas Water Action Collaborative. Again, this is a program developed by Texan by Nature that, specific to water, brings corporate interests together with conservation to match funding sources with projects. And so they came to us saying, well, the Bonneville Environmental Foundation, which is a group that kind of bundles corporate funding for conservation projects, came to us and said, we've got several corporates in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area that have campuses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that use a lot of water. They're looking for conservation projects within the Trinity River Basin. The Trinity River is the major waterway between Dallas-Fort Worth and Houston. We're looking for projects along that basin that would supply water, good clean water, back into the Trinity Basin to offset the usage that we're taking out of the basin. So we said, I bet we can find something. They gave us a dollar amount that they were looking for.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Bruce Donaldson was holding some macho ferns for me, but you have so many out there. I don't know if he's got them back there or I need to just grab the ones here.
Have you paid for them?
No, he was just going to hold them. But
Hey, sorry guys, if we could make sure that we're on mute.
I'll go check our, let me go ask him. Really
For
fast.
Mike Tinky.
Got it.
Sorry,
All
I
right,
thought
go
that was
ahead.
a question for me. So
No way.
what we were able to do is we overlaid, what you can see here is we overlaid the Trinity River Basin on our priority areas. And we looked back through our backlog of projects that we hadn't been able to fund yet. And we quickly and luckily identified a project that this landowner had come to us a year or so before. He had 2,000 acres of mature longleaf that he had purchased as part of a much larger property that he had purchased. Had red cockaded woodpeckers in the past. He wasn't sure if they were still there. But it was a hugely extensive project, mature longleaf, but hadn't been managed in 20 years. Most of it looked like this, just a wall of yaupon. It was going to take a lot to get that back where it needed to be. And so we didn't have the funding prior to this opportunity with this Dallas-Fort Worth corporate conglomerate. And so we started putting a project together. We pulled our partners together, and this is the power of partnership and the power of the organization that had been building since 2014. What was the messaging we were getting from the Texas Water Action Collaborative was they want to be able to demonstrate how the volumetric water yield of this project. If y'all go in, clear out all that yaupon, do some underplanting, do whatever it takes to restore that ecosystem. We need a budget. We need how much it's going to cost to do the work. And we need to know what the return on that conservation funding will be in terms of volumetric water yield. So we pulled these partners together. Raven Environmental is a consulting and management group that some of you may be familiar with. Great group here in East Texas. They do a lot of burning. They do a lot of just normal forest management, but they're also experts in red cockaded woodpeckers. And so we knew we had to bring them in to do the work to make sure we were going to stay in compliance and see what the situation was there. Of course, the landowners were very much interested in participating in this project. And then they had a great forester that helped out as well. So how are we going to demonstrate water yield? So we luckily have one of the premier forest hydrologists here at Stephen F. Austin State University who was willing to jump on board and be a part of the project. And he and his PhD student who was also interested, we found out right away that they would let us, as we developed this budget, we said we're going to have money for monitoring. And so we were able to carve out $100,000 for the monitoring piece because not only did they want us to project the water yield, they wanted us to be able to prove it as we went. And so Dr. McBroom and his PhD student developed this model, and I can share this with you later, but basically it uses the idea of leaf area index reduction to demonstrate volumetric water yield over time. And so we were looking at over 200 million gallons of water yield per year from this project after about a 2-year period where we get the ecosystem back where it needs to be, and then just are in a maintenance mode. This was the other caveat to the project is they wanted a 10-year claim on benefits. So these funders were willing to pay. I'll just jump to the next slide. So we were able to build that out, build the budget, build the water yield estimates, and this is the group of funders that came on board. So in 2023, we received $972,000 from these funders through that Bonneville Environmental Foundation. And based on the projection by that McBroom water yield model, that it would provide increased water filtration totaling 200 million gallons per year for 8 to 12 years, or as long as the maintenance activities continued. And so we kicked off work. So 2,000 acres, a lot of mulching, a lot of herbicide, a lot of fire, some underplanting, but also this kind of cutting edge water monitoring that we're doing. And so our goal here, in addition to, obviously, we want to restore the Longleaf ecosystem, and we want to put this money to work for the funders, but we're hoping also that this monitoring, and this project has grown out, I'll tell you a little more about that, but we're hoping to eventually have enough data that we don't have to do this extensive monitoring on every project we do, that future funders will be willing to accept that, look, we've got a model, we've demonstrated that model is legit, and it's yielding the returns that we anticipated. And so that's the goal of this project. And so they put these water monitoring stations in. They're looking at, a variety of pretreatment stratification of the sample. And I'm not going to go into a lot of depth on this, but it's a robust study that, again, we really hope will serve to benefit future efforts as we move forward. We're a year and a half into this project at this point. So we got past kind of the calibration phase. We've done a whole lot of the treatments on these various stands. And so we're just now getting into the point where there's measurable benefits. The great news is we got a ton of rain last year. And so it's going to be real good to see it. Hopefully we get a lot of rain this year too. And it'll be good to compare the two, pre-treatment, post-treatment, and then as we move forward with maintenance activities. And again, the next one at this point, the funders that funded that first project, that Brushy Creek was the first project, seem really happy with the work that we're doing. And they came back to us again and said, do you have another project? And we identified another project just right down the road from the Brushy Creek project. It's owned by the Tall Timbers organization. It's actually owned by a private landowner here in Texas, but it's a partnership with Tall Timbers that they're calling the Western Piney Woods Quail Program. And this was an area that had been damaged by a tornado and needed to be restored. And so they're putting it back in Longleaf. It's about 1,100 acres, very similar water benefits that we were able to monitor, that we were able to model out. And because of the proximity, we were able to just pull some of the capacity we had for Brushy Creek and expand that monitoring project with the addition of another graduate student right over to Brushy Creek. And again, thank goodness for great partners. Tall Timbers comes with obviously a great science team that's able to do a lot of the technician work out there and guide the project with management of contractors and stuff like that. So that's more benefits from that work of putting our work in the terms that resonate with the corporate world. This one was funded primarily by Google. So we're working to identify additional programs. Bonneville Environmental Foundation has told us that the funders are interested in having a kind of a planned out 5-year pipeline of projects. They want to continue finding new projects and funding similar work in the Trinity Basin. You know, we're always, you saw that that original map I showed. The Longleaf Range just kind of has a sliver in the Trinity Basin. So we're hoping that can expand out to other water basins. And so we're looking at lots of ways. This was a map that the Longleaf Alliance, I think, put together. Kathy would know. They looked at the overlap with the historic range of Longleaf with the source water protection areas. So there's obviously a whole lot of area that's almost a complete, overlap of our service area in East Texas. If we could find the corporates in those other source water protection areas, obviously we can expand this indefinitely. And we're also looking at other specific opportunities. Pasture conversion is another great way that we can demonstrate added water yield. You change a Bermuda hayfield, monoculture hayfield to a longleaf pine savanna ecosystem. It's an expensive project, but the water yield change is going to be very dramatic. And so we're working on quantifying that as well. This is one project that we actually have going right now. So we're looking at all the ways that we can demonstrate that. So the upshot is this: from 2019, where we were not even close to making our targets. In the last 5 years, we've closed the gap. And we're looking at re-upping our conservation plan now. It will start again in 2026. And maybe we'll have even higher goals because our work is accelerating. We're seeing more and more corporate investment. And of course, still getting the funding through NIFWIP as well, as long as it all gets unfrozen with this federal stuff that's going on. I believe that it will, though.
Amen.
So, yeah, I'm still optimistic. So anyway, the future is bright for us, and largely due to the ability to demonstrate the water benefits of longleaf ecosystem restoration. So I hope that was helpful for y'all, and love to answer any questions.
That was very, very helpful, and appreciate you providing, kind of an in-depth look of kind of where you guys started and where you're at today. It's an impressive body of work. One kind of tactical question, and then one kind of broader question, strategic question. On the monitoring and verification, is that Stephen F. Austin? I know they designed the model, but are they doing the annual and regular monitoring and verification, or is that other firm that you mentioned?
No, Ecometrics is the one I mentioned to begin with. They were the ones that helped us put the monetary benefits on kind of that initial return on conservation index document. But yeah, SFA is the one. This is one of those things I say all the time. We must be doing God's work, because the way things have just fallen into place. I mentioned that when we originally got the opportunity to submit a proposal for this Brushy Creek project, I knew I needed Raven Environmental because of the red-cockaded woodpeckers, and I knew I needed SFA because of Matt McBroom and him being one of the preeminent forest hydrologists. Well, it turned out that the guy that ended up being the project manager for Raven was also interested in getting his PhD and had been talking to Matt McBroom about it. And so when this project came up, he was like, "Hey, here's my project." And so it just was, had to be providence that it worked out that way. So yeah, the guy that's working for Raven is also the PhD student that's
Okay.
that's building out this whole model. So, and doing all the monitoring.
Got it. The other that makes a lot of sense. I believe that's your instinct about being in the right place at the right time, and maybe that being providential is right on point. What the other question that I had for you is, are you seeing any with the sort of change in viewpoint around ESG, any sort of change in philosophy from the UN's original sustainable development goals? Maybe it's the same, maybe they're doing the same work, but maybe just talking about it differently. I asked that question because I think we've maybe observed that a little bit here in Georgia, and just curious if you guys are seeing the same thing in Texas.
I haven't. I've wondered about that. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it directly. But yeah, I have wondered about that as well.
Maybe
that
time
might
will
be
tell.
Inevitable. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we'll open it up. Any questions from the group for Jenny? Questions or comments?
Just don't ask me anything really technical about the water yield modeling or monitoring. That's not my area. I'm putting links in the chat to our return on conservation index, and also our Texas Partnership for Forests and Water was also a conservation wrangler after we were. And so there's one for that Texas Partnership as well. So obviously less specific to longleaf, more general for forestry in general. So that might be helpful for y'all. And then I had one more. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Jenny, that was a great presentation. This is Laura Walker from the City of Savannah Water Resources Department. I was just curious, the conversion from the hayfield to the longleaf Savannah, what you said it was expensive. What are we talking about?
Well, the reason that's so expensive is that longleaf cannot outcompete the improved pasture grasses like Bermuda or Bahia. And so it's very critical. The site preparation before you try to do any kind of longleaf restoration is really intensive. It usually requires up to 4 herbicide treatments. And so then you get to this, you get to a place where you've done such intensive herbicide that it's hard to get the grassland component back that will facilitate prescribed fire. And so you're talking 4 herbicide treatments. And then in this case, for this one, what we did is we got a locally adapted seed mix and planted the pasture, and then immediately planted the longleaf. And so as those pasture grasses, that seed mix was not the pasture grasses, as the native grasses and forbs were coming up, the longleaf seedlings were starting to sprout. And then it worked out just right, where the longleaf seedlings were at a good place and growing pretty aggressively by the time we were able to put fire back in there, because there was enough of that ground cover to carry a fire. So it's just a little more extensive of a process than just restoration of a cutover site.
Gotcha. So what's the time frame on that for the 4 herbicide applications? What's the time frame between each of those?
I can't tell you exactly. I think we did it all in 1 year. We were able to, I think mid spring they did one, and then allowed it to green up a little bit. Make sure nothing was, each time there's a green up, and you see that there's still those whichever the pasture grass is that you're concerned about. If it's still there, repeating that. But we were able to get all 4 of those done prior to planting. We started one in year 1 and then planted that next winter, planted longleaf. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny, the studies that you commissioned with the consultants, particularly the water yield study, was it shovel ready or did they have to create and model that from scratch? And if so, if it was shovel ready, did you have others that you could have solicited for that work?
Others being
other consultants, other researchers.
Yeah, I'm sure we could have. We just used the ones that were closest to us that we already had relationships with. As far as shovel ready, we basically knew what needed to happen at that site, but it was, you could see at that first map I showed you, I think it's 10 or 12 different stands, each with slightly different prescriptions. And so we really needed that consulting group to come in. They did a whole forest inventory. And obviously we had the issue of the red-cockaded woodpeckers too, and making sure we were staying within those regulations as well. And luckily, despite what we were afraid of, that they weren't even going to be there anymore, they were. I think there was only one less cluster than had originally been there, or group, whatever we're saying now. So despite a lack of management for almost 20 years, those birds are still there. So yeah, shovel ready is, it was ready to start working, but determining what that work was on each site took a little bit of time. But yeah, I think there's a number of consultants or groups that could have done that, especially had it not been for the RCWs. And we've done other projects that, we'll use. A lot of these projects are brought to us by a consultant. And so you use the one that brings the project to you. So I'm not sure if that quite answers your question.
Yes, essentially they were knocking on your door. That they had a model ready, a protocol to use. That's good to hear. Yeah. So it wasn't from the start, from ground level, so to speak.
Right.
Okay.
Very helpful.
Jenny, what kind of projects have y'all done with on industrial timberland? I know you mentioned REITs and TMOs in East Texas.
We've done, a number of longleaf restoration projects. That one with HEB was a RMS project. Like I said, most of those are marginal forest lands that they don't think they're going to get good loblolly production, and so they're willing to go back in with longleaf. But some of them TTG is an example that they have some forest land, quite a bit of forest land in East Texas that's owned by foreign investor, or it's owned by foreign investors that have really strong environmental reasons for the ownership of that land, not just return through timber production. And so we're finding that those groups are a little more likely to, on a much larger scale, be willing to do longleaf restoration. Those projects have not been these corporate funded projects. They've been the ones funded through our normal cost share program where we pay 50% essentially. And then the company takes the other 50, which is a great deal for them. It gives them a leg up on their investment for sure.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate your listening. And I'll put my contact information in the chat. Feel free to reach out if you have additional questions or if we can help with anything.
Thank you again, Jenny. Very, very helpful, and I think a good model for us to look up to here in Georgia. And we'll next time UGA is in Texas, maybe we'll need to schedule some time to come down there and see you. So,
for sure.
Good deal. Next up for the last kind of 20 minutes here, just have a couple of updates, and I want to kick it over to our water quality chief over at the Georgia Forestry Commission, Mr. Scott Baxton, for a couple of updates.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We got you.
Okay. Okay. I won't be long. I've just got a couple little things to touch on. I can't remember if the last meeting, if we had completed our LSR grant project, our FY22 LSR grant, but we finished that up in the early part of this year. That grant, we were using some LSR funds from the Forest Service to get forest stewardship plans for landowners in the upper Oconee region with the intent of, getting better education on how to manage those properties well, with the inclusion, of course, of forestry B&Ps on those properties, help those landowners figure out how to make those properties more profitable where they could hold on to them and have that option versus selling them off for further development, which is really gone crazy in the upper Oconee in the last few years. So at the final numbers, we spent the grant fund and we got 15 plans completed on over 7,500 acres. Those were scattered around in 7 different counties. And we have a proposal, an application in for another round of funding to do the same kind of thing. This has been a partnership grant with our state, South Carolina, Texas, and Arkansas in the past. This next go around, it'll just be South Carolina, Texas, and Georgia. South Carolina will be the lead state this go around on it. And we hope to get another 7 to 21 plans, depending on the acreages and the funding that we have this go around. It'll probably fall somewhere in that same range, around 15, give or take, depending on the acreages. But we haven't got that funding yet. We're hoping to hear something later on, but with the situation with federal funding and grants and things right now kind of in limbo, we don't know. And the Forest Service isn't able to really tell us anything at this point either. So, but that's been real successful to this point, and we're hoping we can continue with some of that if we get the funds. We're not going to get quite as much funding as last time either way, but it's done some good work and helped some landowners, and hopefully will help keep a little bit more area in forest in that area. The only other thing I just wanted to touch on is just a little bit of a comment. And a lot of this is preaching to the choir, and a lot of y'all are aware of some of these discussions. We have regional water councils throughout the state, and there's a lot of things discussed in those regional water planning councils. The Forestry Commission typically sends representatives to listen. We're not part of the councils. We're just like anybody else. We're part of the public. We're there to monitor what they're talking about. And if there's questions about forestry and things like that, we're there to answer those questions too. But one of the things just in general from a 50,000 foot level that I've noticed in the 15 plus years that I've been involved with some of that, and my people have been involved with some of that, is the issue of trying to rob Peter to pay Paul. And we're getting to the point in the state, from just some of the discussions I hear in those meetings and some of the discussions outside those meetings with other groups, where Georgia's always had an abundance of water, unlike a lot of places in the West where they're very limited with water, and they've had water wars, so to speak, for years. And we're getting to the point with development in this state, especially in certain high concentrated areas, where we're running out of water. We just are getting to that. We're the early stages. I mean, right now we have water, but some of the discussions involve, cross basin transfers of water from one region to another to facilitate growth in one region, which all you're doing, again, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Things like these big, huge land conversion projects like the Hyundai plant down towards Savannah, the Rivian plant up in the Oconee area or close to it. A lot of these solar development projects, these things are eating up a lot of forest land. And that is contributing to, in the long run, problems with our water. as far as the quality, because you're replacing forest with something else that's a whole lot higher risk and problematic for water. But these facilities also oftentimes use a lot of water, or they lead to further population growth and development that will need more water. So what I'm hearing, not necessarily sometimes directly in those council meetings and sometimes in the discussions outside the council meetings, is how are we going to manipulate the water we have to supply this or that development or this or that area. But there's no free lunch. You're taking it from one to give to another. And we're starting to see the beginnings of potential interstate water wars between committees. I could see that happening, maybe not right away, but I mean, Georgia's already experienced that in the past on a bigger level with other states. As most people are aware, we had the quote water wars with Alabama and Florida, largely due to the Atlanta area needing a lot of water that could have otherwise gone downstream to some of those other states. Georgia was lucky, I guess, in that aspect. We won the court battles, but some of these things could lead to internal fighting within the state. And I think we all need to start thinking about that. And there needs to be some discussion on how do we balance overdevelopment versus our forest land and the environmental and economic consequences that go along with that. I mean, I hear a lot of people that push development, and it's always, we're going to bring in more revenue, but I never hear the other side of that argument about, well, what cost does this also include? And that's cost to the environment, for your water quality, your air, your wildlife, just basic space and recreation. And all those have economic dollar amounts tied to them too. When you have to treat your water, for drinking water, treatment goes up, and you have to maintain that infrastructure to supply that drinking water. Wastewater, there has to be facilities and infrastructure for that has to be built and maintained. More electrical infrastructure, roads and traffic, schools. And rural communities are oftentimes hurt with social problems too when you have this extra development. You have health issues and crime issues just from basic confrontations when you have more and more people pushed together and all these different economic interests fighting with each other. But the biggest thing is, just out of these discussions and things that I have heard talked about from others, is, well, one area wants water and the other area wants it too. Who's going to win? And a big way to really counteract some of this is maybe flip the coin and start talking about, well, maybe we need to limit some of the things that are taking up this water. We have a limited supply, and we can't go on indefinitely pretending like it's endless. But that's just a comment based on some of the discussions I've heard from multiple sources all across the state. I mean, this is a lot of y'all that are on this call are aware of these issues and have heard some of these conversations probably in the past, but I could see parts of the Southeast with the population continuing to grow at some point to get to the point where you have seen these things for years and decades out west. So it's one of those problems that we can hopefully put a dent in by conserving our forests and managing them well. So that's all. I just wanted to put that in everybody's ear. Again, I know that's probably preaching to the choir to a lot of y'all, but just something that I've kind of gleaned from those meetings and other talks over the last 10, 15 years. And that's it.
Well, certainly an easy topic here at the end of the meeting there, Scott. We appreciate that. I'm halfway kidding, but it's an important one nonetheless, and one that I think we need to continue thinking about, and importantly within that, not only realizing that we need to conserve our forest land, but we need to make sure that landowners are compensated for the management and the benefits, the ecosystem service benefits they're providing.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is the flip side of that too. It's the golden rule, whether people want to believe it or hear it or not. If something can't pay for itself, it disappears.
That's
And
right.
we all need that forest land for all those multiple reasons to avoid all those problems that I listed and to keep economic costs down. It's cheaper to keep it around than it is to deal with some of these other problems that could happen if it continues down the road we seem to be headed toward.
Well, good deal. Thank you again, Scott. And here at the end here, definitely not least, we've got our friends with the Georgia Rural Water Association, Mr. Jay Matthews and Mr. Steve Walker. So I'll turn it over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Matt, and very well said, Scott, and I appreciate that. This is Jay Matthews, and that rolls right into this. Water is life, and we got to protect it, and we can't take it for granted. And I'm seeing that more and more sometimes until it's late in some communities that are really struggling. Corridors that are growing rapidly. Water is a precious resource, and we work every day providing technical assistance to communities through regulatory compliance issues, operational issues, managerial issues. One of the technical assistance we provide is source water protection plan. Steve Walker, who was on this call, works with us for the past 4 years, providing communities with educational opportunities and just plans in general to protect the source water. And one common thing we come back to is if you protect the land around you, around your source, and protecting it with healthy forest environments, that water quality much better, much easier to treat. You compromise your land in your surrounding area, those costs of treating that water go up tremendously. We work with these systems every day to understand that those threats and impacts to their source water bill, they do and what they decide in their communities impacts that. Zoning ordinances and development. Neighboring communities need to understand they have to have a good relationship with the neighboring communities upstream from the source. I was glad Matt showed that graph early in the presentation about the number of surface water intakes around the state. Primarily, most permitted systems are groundwater sources, but there are a tremendous number of source water intakes out there that are more readily and easily compromised than a groundwater system. All can be compromised. Steve, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Walker to kind of give you a little highlight of what one of the particular plans he did for Royston, Georgia, and how the healthy forest around their intake has been very beneficial. Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you, but also Steve's counterpart, I think, is on this morning from Texas Rural Water. I believe he joined in as well. We looked at the participant list. Did Frank Hernandez join in? See on there. He's of course working precious in Texas Rural Water. Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it from there.
All right. Thanks, Jay. As Jay was mentioned, first off, am I on the screen? Can anybody see me?
Yes, sir. We got you.
Can you hear me? I guess you can hear me as well. As Jay mentioned, Georgia Rural Water, most of what we do is technical support for all water, wastewater and drinking water. We're focused talking about drinking water today. All aspects, not only source water, but a lot of our circuit riders, they're all over the state all the time. They're looking at treatment and distribution issues as well. Drinking water. I work as a source water protection specialist, and I'm focused on acquisition of water, acquisition and protection of water. Now, I'm looking at likely and unlikely scenarios with this. A likely scenario would be a problematic issue in a water system that's upstream of a drinking water intake. An unlikely scenario would be a railroad trestle upstream of the surface water intake. There could be train derailments that would instantly or very quickly affect the drinking water intake. That would be a looming issue. And that's, if you're going to talk about protecting a surface water intake or a well management zone close to a well, you want to look at both things you can see out there, things that could happen, uh, likely and unlikely. Um, I have a couple of examples here. Let me open up a screen. Okay, is this visible? My PowerPoint visible to everyone?
Not yet.
Okay, I didn't quite get that. Can you see this?
No, sir. No, sir. Not, can't see your screen.
Okay, how about now? Still a no?
No, sir.
Okay.
You may have to
Well, if
just
you want
talk
to,
through it, Steve.
yeah, if you want to talk through it, Steve, and we can email it out to the group afterwards.
Okay, no, that's unfortunate. Okay, there's the physiographic provinces of Georgia. We have the northern half of the state is primarily a fractured rock aquifer, and the aquifer itself is everything that's below your feet, from the top of the soil layer all the way down. It's not a confining situation, or as so many people think of underground river. Such things exist, but pretty uncommon. So the northern half of the state, everything, rainfall, surface water recharges the aquifer. Okay, in the southern half of the state, you have a layered system. You have aquifers, you have confining layers. Aquifers are that's the layer that has potable water in an adequate quantity. A
Steve,
confining
this is
layer
Jay. I
is,
told me to keep you going because they got about 3 or 4 minutes, I believe. You might want to really hit the Royston
okay, I'll
plan
get
and to
on to
have
Royston.
the healthy forest was significant for them.
Right. Royston is a town in the Piedmont or Blue Ridge area of Georgia. They have a big watershed above their surface water intake. And there's a lot of activity in the watershed, a lot of human activity, but they had a looming issue with a RV park coming in. We're going to put in some septic systems. And they were going to drink these. They were going to wind up drinking leachate coming from these septic systems because these discharge directly into the surface water. We were able to had a presentation to the city council, and the last I've heard, this RV septic system did not come in as a result of the presentation. They have very little forested area in over 100 square mile watershed. So that's just one example of a looming issue that we were able to cause not to happen. Now, out of 100 miles, 100 square miles of watershed, they had maybe 20 square miles of forest, of national forest land there. So, um, other examples are karst issues. Okay. I guess that's about all I have then. I can't share my screen, so.
Well,
You send it to Matt. He'll share it with the group.
yeah, definitely. And I appreciate the illustration and kind of the reiteration of the importance of having that forested watershed to support that growth and development. We're kind of right up here on the edge of our time together, and one of the, I think, beneficial reasons for hosting a group like this is we all get along and probably have a lot of ideas to share. But before we kind of break, any any comments for the group, any updates that anybody wants to share? Very good. I'm going to be sending out some more information about these kind of quarterly roundtables to ensure that we've kind of continue getting together throughout the year. We're also in the process of thinking through our workshop, same kind of format that we did last year with our stakeholder workshop, and as we're kind of formulating that plan, if you guys have any ideas of topics that you'd like to hear about or speakers that you'd like to hear from, please don't hesitate to send those forward to us. And likewise, if you've got any issues in a specific community that you'd like to highlight for the group, as Kathy mentioned, if there's an opportunity for funding or a problem that you're running into with funding in the meantime, let us know, and there may be a way that we can set up a little group of experts to work on that issue and find a solution. Thank you all again for joining us today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. We hope you'll reach out to us. Hope you stay connected with this group, and look forward to our next meeting. I'll hang around for a little bit here, but for the purpose of this call, I will be adjourned.